My name is Margaret, and I'm 22 years old. 3 months ago, I walked across that stage at State University as a psychology graduate, thinking it would be the proudest day of my life. I had worked so hard for 4 years juggling two part-time jobs while maintaining my grades, all to reach that moment. My cap felt perfect on my head, my gown flowing behind me as I approached the podium to receive my diploma. The applause filled the outdoor amphitheater, and I could see my parents sitting in the third row. I thought this was it, the moment my father would finally be proud of me. But sometimes the biggest revelations come with the biggest consequences. What happened next would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family and force me to make a choice that would change all our lives forever. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready to hear how one envelope completely turned my graduation day upside down, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories. Trust me, what I'm about to share will show you that sometimes family secrets have a way of revealing themselves at the worst possible moment. Growing up, I was what everyone called the perfect daughter. My father, Robert, was a successful real estate developer, always impeccably dressed in his tailored suits, driving his black Mercedes to important meetings across the city. My mother, Linda, was the quintessential homemaker, always ensuring our house looked like something out of a magazine, with fresh flowers on every table and home-cooked meals ready precisely at 6:30 each evening. From the time I could walk, I felt this overwhelming pressure to be flawless. In elementary school, I brought home straight-A report cards, participated in every school play, and volunteered to clean the classroom after school. During middle school, I joined the debate team and student council, spending countless afternoons perfecting my speeches while other kids played video games. High school brought even more achievements: captain of the tennis team, National Honor Society president, and valedictorian of my graduating class. But here's what nobody saw behind all those gold stars and certificates: Robert's growing emotional distance. When I won the state debate championship, he barely looked up from his newspaper to acknowledge my trophy. During parent-teacher conferences, he would check his watch constantly and excuse himself for urgent business calls. When other fathers cheered loudly at tennis matches, mine sat stone-faced in the bleachers, often leaving before the match ended. I remember one particular evening when I was 17, bursting through the front door with my acceptance letter to State University. Linda was in the kitchen, her hands covered in flour from making my favorite chocolate chip cookies. "Mom, I got in," I screamed, waving the thick envelope above my head. She dropped everything, flour flying everywhere, and wrapped me in the biggest hug. We danced around the kitchen island, both of us crying happy tears. When Robert came home an hour later, Linda excitedly showed him the letter. His response still echoes in my mind: "College is expensive for uncertain returns. Hope you've thought about how you're paying for it." No congratulations, no pride, no acknowledgement of the 4 years of perfect grades that earned me partial scholarships. That conversation led to my decision to major in psychology instead of business, which Robert had insisted would be more practical. His reaction was ice cold. "Do what you want, you always do anyway." Those words stung more than any physical slap could have. Throughout my 4 years at State University, the distance between us grew into a chasm. While other students complained about parents calling too often, mine barely called at all. Robert's financial support was minimal, forcing me to work 25 hours a week at the campus library and another 15 hours at Java Junction, the coffee shop near campus. I watched my classmates worry about midterms while I worried about making rent. My college boyfriend Danny, a pre-med student with kind eyes and an easy laugh, often questioned Robert's behavior. "It's not normal, Maggie," he'd say, after another missed birthday call or forgotten graduation ceremony. "Parents are supposed to be excited about their kids' success." I always defended Robert, making excuses about his demanding career and busy schedule. But deep down, Danny's words planted seeds of doubt I wasn't ready to face. Linda tried to bridge the gap, attending every event Robert missed, but even she seemed nervous around him when discussing my achievements. She would lower her voice when telling him about my dean's list recognition or my acceptance into the psychology honors program, as if my success was something to hide rather than celebrate. Graduation morning arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that makes everything feel possible. I woke up at 6 a.m. in my tiny studio apartment, the same space I'd called home for 2 years while working to afford living off campus. My cap and gown hung carefully on the closet door, pressed and ready for the most important day of my academic life. My roommate Susan from freshman year had driven up from her new job in Chicago specifically for my graduation. She knocked on my door at 7:30, carrying a bag full of makeup and hair supplies. "Today's the day, graduate," she squealed, setting up what she called Margaret's makeover station on my bathroom counter. As Susan curled my hair and applied just enough makeup to photograph, well, I stared at myself in the small mirror above my sink. 22 years old, psychology degree about to be official, 2 job offers already on the table from local mental health clinics. I had done it entirely on my own with minimal support from the one person whose approval I craved most. "You look absolutely beautiful," Susan said, stepping back to admire her work. "Your parents are going to be so proud." I smiled, but something in my chest felt tight when she mentioned my parents. Around 9 a.m. my phone rang. Linda's name appeared on the screen and I answered immediately. "Good morning, sweetheart." Her voice sounded strained, almost breathless. "Are you ready for your big day?" "I'm so ready, Mom. I can't believe it's finally here." I twirled in front of my full-length mirror, watching my gown flow around me. "Margaret, honey." Linda paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. "Are you really ready for today? I mean, really ready for everything that might happen?" Her question struck me as odd. "What do you mean?" "It's just graduation, Mom. I walk across the stage, get my diploma, and we celebrate." "Of course, dear. I just want you to be prepared for, well, you know how your father can be sometimes." I brushed off her concern as typical pre-event jitters. Linda always worried about everything running smoothly, from the weather to traffic to whether the photographer would get good shots. The drive to campus took 20 minutes, and I spent the entire time visualizing the ceremony. I pictured myself walking confidently across that stage, shaking hands with Dean Morrison, looking out into the audience to see both my parents beaming with pride. For once, just once, I wanted to see that look of genuine happiness on Robert's face. I arrived at the outdoor amphitheater at 10:15, giving myself plenty of time to find my assigned seat among the psychology graduates. The venue looked absolutely stunning. Blue and gold banners hung from every post, white chairs, arranged in perfect rows, and a stage decorated with massive bouquets of spring flowers. After checking in and receiving my program, I scanned the filling audience for my parents. The third row, section B, just like we'd planned. There they were, Robert in his charcoal gray suit and navy tie, looking as formal and businesslike as ever. Linda beside him in a pale pink dress I'd helped her pick out last weekend, clutching her purse in her lap like a lifeline. I waved enthusiastically, my heart swelling with anticipation. Linda waved back immediately, her smile genuine, but somehow sad. Robert saw me but simply nodded once, then returned his attention to his phone. This was it. After 4 years of struggle, 2 jobs, countless sleepless nights studying, and more student loan debt than I wanted to calculate, I was about to become a college graduate. I had convinced myself that this moment would change everything between Robert and me. Surely he would have to acknowledge my accomplishment today. As I settled into my seat among my fellow psychology graduates, I made a silent promise to myself. After the ceremony, I would approach Robert directly, tell him how much his approval meant to me, and invite both parents to celebrate at Roberto's Italian restaurant, his favorite place in town. Today would mark a new beginning for our relationship. The ceremony began at exactly 11 a.m., with Dean Morrison's welcoming remarks about achievement, perseverance, and the bright futures ahead of us. I listened intently to every word, feeling each sentence validate the struggles of the past 4 years. When he spoke about the importance of family support in reaching this milestone, I instinctively looked toward my parents again. The morning progressed through various speakers and award presentations. I watched seniors from every department receive special recognition for academic excellence, community service, and leadership. Each time applause filled the amphitheater. I felt my excitement building for my own moment to shine. When they finally announced the psychology graduates, my row stood in unison. My heart pounded so hard, I was certain the person next to me could hear it. We formed a line at the side of the stage, waiting for our names to be called alphabetically. Margaret Anderson was 7th on the list, which meant I didn't have long to wait. Margaret Rose Anderson, graduating summa cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Those words echoed across the amphitheater through the microphone system. I walked confidently across that stage, my steps steady despite my racing pulse. Dean Morrison shook my hand firmly and placed my diploma in my other hand. The photographer's flash went off, capturing what I hoped would be a moment of pure joy. As I paused at the center of the stage, I looked directly at my parents in the audience. Linda was crying happy tears, her hands pressed to her heart. Robert sat motionless, his expression completely neutral, as if he was watching a stranger receive an award that had nothing to do with him. I returned to my seat, diploma clutched in my hands, trying to hold on to the pride I felt despite Robert's lack of reaction. The remaining psychology graduates received their degrees, followed by students from other departments. Every few minutes I glanced back at my parents, hoping to catch Robert showing some sign of enthusiasm. When Dean Morrison delivered his closing remarks about new beginnings and the importance of family bonds, I felt a surge of optimism. This was it. The ceremony was ending, and soon I would finally have that conversation with Robert that would change everything. As families began gathering on the lawn surrounding the amphitheater for photos and congratulations, I practically ran toward my parents. Linda was already standing, her purse clutched in both hands, tears still streaming down her cheeks. Robert remained seated, checking his phone with the same expression he wore during business meetings. "Mom, Dad," I called out as I approached them, my graduation cap slightly askew from my enthusiastic rush through the crowd. Linda immediately wrapped me in the tightest hug of my life. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud." Her voice broke with emotion, and I could feel her tears on my cheek. Robert finally stood up, but his posture remained rigid, arms crossed over his chest. He looked at me with the same cold expression I'd seen countless times throughout my childhood whenever I'd sought his approval. "Dad," I said, my voice filled with hope and excitement. "Did you see me up there? I finally did it. 4 years of hard work and I graduated summa cum laude. I was thinking we could celebrate at Roberto's just like we used to when I was little." What happened next will be burned into my memory forever. Robert's voice cut through the celebratory atmosphere around us like a knife, and he spoke loud enough that at least a dozen nearby families could hear every word. "Don't expect me to celebrate mediocrity, Margaret. Frankly, this whole charade needs to end right here, right now. You're not my real daughter anyway, so I'm done pretending to care about your little achievements." The words hit me like a physical blow, but the silence that followed was even worse. Every conversation around us stopped abruptly. Parents who had been laughing and taking photos turned to stare at our small family drama unfolding in real time. I could see phones being lifted, people starting to record what was clearly becoming much more than a typical graduation day disagreement. Linda gasped so loudly that several people stepped closer to make sure she was okay. Her face went completely white and she grabbed Robert's arm. "Robert, please, not here, not today," she whispered desperately. But Robert wasn't finished. He shook off Linda's grip and continued his public humiliation of me, his voice growing louder and more cruel with each word. 22 years of this pretense is enough, Margaret. I'm tired of pretending you matter to me when you don't. Find your real father if you want someone to be proud of your mediocre degree. As of today, you're officially cut off from this family." The crowd around us had grown larger. I could hear whispers starting. Did he just say she's not his daughter? Is someone recording this? That poor girl. Some people looked embarrassed to be witnessing such a private moment, while others seemed fascinated by the drama unfolding. Standing there in my cap and gown holding my diploma, I felt something strange happening inside me. The initial shock and devastation began transforming into something else entirely. Suddenly, all those years of Robert's emotional distance made perfect sense. His lack of resemblance to me, my dark hair and brown eyes compared to his blonde hair and blue eyes. Linda's nervous behavior whenever anyone commented on family genetics. The way Robert always seemed like he was tolerating my presence rather than enjoying it. But more than that, I realized I wasn't just devastated. I was angry. Furious, actually. How dare he choose my graduation day? My moment of triumph, to deliver this crushing blow in front of hundreds of people. How dare he reduce 4 years of my hard work to mediocre achievements? And then, like a lightning bolt, I remembered something I'd been carrying with me for 3 years. Something I'd discovered by accident and kept secret, waiting for the right moment to address it privately with my family. Something that would prove Robert wasn't the only one in our family with DNA secrets. Linda was crying openly now, apologizing to me over and over while glaring at Robert with more anger than I'd ever seen from her. "I'm so sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry. This isn't how this was supposed to happen." Robert had started walking away, clearly considering the conversation finished. He'd delivered his devastating blow and expected that to be the end of it. Just like always, he assumed he could control the narrative and walk away without consequences. But as I watched him stride confidently toward the parking lot, something crystallized in my mind. If Robert wanted to play the DNA card, if he wanted to make public announcements about family secrets, then maybe it was time for him to learn that he wasn't the only one who knew how to do research. I looked at the crowd of people still staring at us, many of them holding phones. At Linda, who was sobbing and shaking beside me. At Robert's retreating figure, so confident in his ability to hurt me and walk away unscathed. That's when I made my decision. My psychology training kicked in as I stood there watching Robert walk away. 4 years of studying human behavior, crisis intervention, and family dynamics had taught me to analyze situations objectively even when I was in the middle of them. Robert's behavior showed classic patterns of someone who needed to control narratives, who used public humiliation as a weapon, and who expected his victims to simply accept whatever he chose to dish out. But what Robert didn't know was that I'd been carrying a secret of my own for 3 years. A secret I'd discovered completely by accident during my sophomore year when I was helping Linda organize old family documents for their insurance company. It had started as a simple biology class assignment. Professor Williams required us to create detailed family medical histories tracing genetic traits and health patterns through at least 3 generations. I'd approached Linda about gathering information on both sides of the family, particularly about my grandmother Eleanor's health records, since she'd passed away when I was 12. Linda had been nervous about the project from the beginning, making excuses about not having the right documents or not remembering specific details. But eventually she'd agreed to let me help sort through the file cabinets in Robert's home office while he was away on one of his frequent business trips. We'd spent an entire Saturday afternoon going through folders marked insurance, medical, and family records. Linda had seemed increasingly anxious as we worked, frequently checking the time and jumping at every small sound outside. At the time, I'd attributed her nervousness to the natural discomfort most people feel when organizing personal documents. That's when I found the folder marked Private RB, tucked behind several insurance files. Inside were DNA test results from a paternity testing company called Genetic Truths, dated just 5 years ago. The results clearly showed Robert as the biological father of someone named James Robert Patterson, with a birth date that made James 20 years old, 2 years younger than me. The mother was listed as Patricia Lynn Patterson, with an address in Millfield just 23 miles from our house. But the documents didn't stop there. There were copies of bank statements showing monthly payments of $1,500 to Patricia Patterson going back 24 years. 24 years, which meant these payments had started before James was even born and had continued throughout my entire life. There were photographs, too. Pictures of Robert with a dark-haired boy who looked remarkably like him taken at various ages. Robert teaching the boy to ride a bike. Robert at what appeared to be the boy's high school graduation beaming with pride. Robert and the boy fishing together, both of them laughing at something off camera. All the attention, pride, and father-son bonding that had been missing from my relationship with Robert was right there in those photographs given freely to James, while I struggled for even basic acknowledgement of my existence. I'd quickly photographed all the documents with my phone, returned everything to the folder, exactly as I'd found it, and never mentioned the discovery to Linda. Something in her behavior that day told me she already knew about Robert's secret family, and the last thing I wanted was to force her into an impossible position. For 3 years, I'd carried this knowledge, unsure what to do with it. Part of me had hoped I'd never need to use it. I'd fantasized about Robert finally showing me genuine love and attention, making the information irrelevant. But every missed birthday call, every dismissive comment about my achievements, every cold interaction had added weight to my decision to keep the evidence. Now, standing in my graduation gown while Robert publicly disowned me, I realized the moment had finally arrived. I looked around at the crowd still watching our family drama unfold. Many people were openly recording now, their phones held high to capture whatever happened next. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt empowered. If Robert wanted to make this public, if he wanted to humiliate me in front of hundreds of people, then perhaps it was time for some public accountability. I approached Thomas, a fellow psychology graduate, standing nearby with his family. "Thomas, could you help me get to the podium microphone? I have something I need to say." Thomas looked confused but nodded. "Are you sure, Margaret? Maybe you should just let him leave?" "I'm absolutely sure," I replied, my voice steadier than I'd expected. Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken publicly. Walking toward the podium felt like the longest and shortest journey of my life simultaneously. My legs were steady, my hands weren't shaking, and my mind was crystal clear. Years of debate team experience had taught me how to command an audience's attention, and 4 years of psychology courses had given me the analytical tools to understand exactly what I was about to do and why. The microphone was still active from the ceremony, and families were still gathered on the lawn taking photos when I reached the podium. I tapped the microphone twice, and the sound echoed across the amphitheater, causing dozens of conversations to stop mid-sentence. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the space. "I'm sorry to interrupt your celebrations, but since my father just announced he's disowning me because I'm not his real daughter, I think it's only fair to share some DNA secrets of our own." The effect was immediate. Every person on that lawn turned toward the podium. Conversations stopped entirely. Parents pulled their children closer, sensing drama, but unsure whether they should stay or leave. Phones appeared from pockets and purses as people realized they might be witnessing something significant. Robert, who had been halfway to the parking lot, stopped dead in his tracks. I could see his shoulders tense as he realized what was happening. Linda's sobbing quieted as she looked up at me with a mixture of terror and fascination. I reached into the small purse I'd been carrying and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared 3 years ago. Inside were printed copies of every document I'd found in Robert's office, organized chronologically and highlighted for maximum impact. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Margaret Anderson, and the man walking away is Robert, who just disowned me on what should be the proudest day of my life. My voice remained calm and clear, carrying the authority I'd developed through years of public speaking. I held up the envelope so everyone could see it. 3 years ago, I discovered that my father has been living a double life. While he's been emotionally absent from my life, calling my achievements mediocre and forcing me to work 2 jobs to pay for college, he's been playing devoted father to his son James in the next town over. Gasps echoed across the lawn. Someone near the back called out, "What's in the envelope?" I opened the envelope deliberately, making sure the microphone picked up the sound of papers rustling. These are DNA test results, bank statements, and photographs that tell a very different story about family loyalty and biological relationships. Robert had turned around and was walking quickly back toward the podium, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Margaret, you stop this right now. You have no right to air private family business." I looked directly at him as he approached. "You made it public business when you disowned me in front of 300 people, Dad. Now everyone gets to hear the whole truth." The crowd pressed closer, forming a semicircle around the podium area. I could see people in the back standing on chairs to get a better view. Someone had clearly called local news stations because I spotted a reporter with a camera crew pushing through the crowd. I held up the first document. These DNA test results from Genetic Truths show that Robert Anderson is indeed the biological father of James Robert Patterson, age 20. James was born when I was 2 years old, which means my father was having an affair with Patricia Patterson while my mother was caring for a toddler. Linda let out a sound that was part sob, part gasp. Several women in the crowd shook their heads in disgust, while others reached for their phones to record the revelation. But wait, there's more. I continued, channeling every ounce of confidence I'd ever developed. These bank statements show monthly payments of $1,500 to Patricia Patterson for 24 years. That's $360,000 in support payments for his affair child, while he forced his legitimate daughter to work 25 hours a week just to afford college. The crowd's reaction was audible now. I heard someone call out, "That's horrible," while another voice said, "Good for you, honey." I held up the photographs next, and even from a distance people could see what they depicted. These photos show my father at James's high school graduation beaming with pride. Here's Dad teaching James to drive. Here's Dad at James's college orientation at the exact same university I just graduated from, where he refused to attend my orientation 4 years ago because he said college was too expensive. Robert reached the area in front of the podium, his face purple with rage. "Those are private documents. You're violating my privacy. I'll sue you for defamation." I looked down at him, calmly drawing on every lesson I'd learned about maintaining composure under pressure. "Dad, truth is a perfect defense against defamation. Would you like me to provide these documents to the local newspaper so they can verify their authenticity?" The crowd erupted in murmurs and scattered applause. I could see people turning to their neighbors, sharing shocked reactions, and asking if someone was getting this on video. Mrs. Henderson, our longtime neighbor, pushed forward from the crowd. "Margaret, honey, is this really true? Your father has another family." When I nodded, she shook her head sadly. "I always wondered about those business trips to Millfield. 24 years of business trips to the same small town seemed excessive." Dr. Martinez, Linda's friend from book club, appeared beside Mrs. Henderson. "Patricia Patterson," she said slowly. "I remember that name coming up years ago in connection with Robert. Linda, you poor dear, how long have you known?" All eyes turned to Linda, who was still crying but had found her voice. "I've suspected for years," she said loud enough for nearby people to hear. The unexplained absences, the second cell phone, the financial discrepancies I couldn't account for. But I never had proof until... She looked up at me apologetically. "I found those same documents 2 years ago, Margaret. I've been gathering evidence for divorce proceedings." This revelation sent another wave of shock through the crowd. Someone called out, "You go, Linda," while others applauded her courage. But I wasn't finished. I held up the final document, the one that would deliver the most devastating blow to Robert's attempt to disown me. "Here's the most ironic part of this entire situation," I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the now completely silent amphitheater. "Among these DNA test results is a comprehensive family tree analysis that Robert ordered last year, probably to verify James's paternity for legal purposes." I paused for effect, looking directly at Robert's increasingly panicked expression. "According to these official results from Genetic Truths, I am 100% Robert Anderson's biological daughter. 99.7% probability to be exact." I held the document high enough for people in the front rows to see the official letterhead and results. The crowd's reaction was explosive. Gasps, scattered applause, and several people shouting, "Oh my God!" filled the air. Robert's face went from purple to white in the span of 10 seconds. So, Dad, I continued, my voice steady and clear, you just publicly disowned your actual biological daughter while secretly raising and financially supporting your affair child for 24 years. You've spent more money on James in the past 2 years than you've spent on my entire education. You attended his graduation with pride while treating mine like an inconvenience. I leaned closer to the microphone for my final statement. How's that for family DNA secrets? The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Robert stood frozen in front of the podium, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, unable to form a coherent response to what I'd just revealed. The crowd pressed closer, everyone talking at once, creating a wall of sound that made individual conversations impossible to follow. "Show us the documents," someone called out from the back. "Is someone recording this?" another voice asked. "That poor girl," I heard an elderly woman say. Standing up to him like that took real courage. Mrs. Henderson marched directly up to Robert, her finger pointed at his chest. "Robert Anderson, I have known you for 15 years, and I am absolutely disgusted. That beautiful girl worked her tail off to graduate, and this is how you treat her." Dr. Martinez had her arm around Linda, who was crying, but seemed relieved rather than devastated. "Linda, you don't have to protect him anymore. Everyone can see exactly what kind of man he is." Several other graduates and their families approached me at the podium, offering support and asking to see the documents. I handed copies to anyone who wanted to examine them watching, as people passed them around, pointing to specific details and shaking their heads in disbelief. Thomas, who had helped me reach the podium, looked at me with something like awe. "Margaret, that was incredible. I can't believe you've been carrying this secret for 3 years." "Sometimes you have to wait for the right moment," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt despite the chaos around us. Robert finally found his voice, but instead of apologizing or explaining, he went on the attack. "This is harassment, Margaret. You're going to regret this. Those documents were obtained illegally." "Actually," said a voice from the crowd, "if those documents were stored in a family home and accessed by a family member for legitimate purposes, there's no legal violation." I turned to see Professor Williams, my former biology teacher, approaching the podium with a satisfied smile. "Margaret, I remember that family medical history project. I wondered at the time why your mother seemed so nervous about the assignment." The crowd parted as a local news reporter and cameraman reached the front. "Ma'am, I'm Jennifer Torres from Channel 7 News. Would you be willing to comment on what just happened here?" Before I could answer, we heard car doors slamming in the parking lot. 2 people were walking quickly toward our group, a woman with short brown hair and a young man who looked remarkably like Robert. "Oh my God," Linda whispered. "That's Patricia. And James." The crowd turned to watch Patricia Patterson and James approach, both of them looking confused and concerned. Patricia was holding her phone, clearly having seen social media posts about the graduation day drama. "Robert," Patricia called out as she got closer. "What's going on?" "James saw videos online of some kind of confrontation at a graduation ceremony, and we recognized you in the background." James looked directly at me, then at Robert, then back at me. "Wait," he said slowly. "Who is this Robert you never mentioned having a daughter?" The crowd fell silent again, everyone realizing they were about to witness the moment when Robert's 2 families met face to face for the first time. Patricia looked between Robert and me, her confusion evident. "I don't understand. Robert, who is this young woman, and why does she have documents about our family?" I looked at James, seeing Robert's features clearly reflected in his face. The same blonde hair, the same blue eyes, the same jawline. Standing next to me, the family resemblance between him and Robert was unmistakable, while I looked nothing like either of them. "Hi," I said, addressing James directly. "I'm Margaret Anderson. I'm Robert's daughter from his marriage to Linda. And until about 10 minutes ago, I had no idea you existed either." James's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, and then anger as he looked at Robert. "Dad, what is she talking about? You have another daughter. How is that possible?" Patricia grabbed Robert's arm. Robert, explain this right now. What does she mean she's your daughter? The news reporter sensed the dramatic escalation and moved closer with her camera. Sir, would you like to comment on these allegations about maintaining two separate families? Robert looked around wildly, surrounded by accusers' evidence and cameras. His carefully controlled public image was crumbling in real time, and there was no way to stop it. This is insane, he finally managed to say. Patricia, James, let's go. We don't need to be part of this circus. But James wasn't moving. He was staring at me with a mixture of curiosity and sympathy. Margaret, is it? How long have you known about us? 3 years, I answered honestly. But I never knew your name or anything about you personally until today. James turned to Robert, his voice rising with anger. 3 years, Dad. You've had another daughter for my entire life, and you never told me what kind of person does that. Patricia was examining the documents that people in the crowd were still passing around. When she saw the bank statements, her face went pale. Robert, these payments, this money you've been giving me for James, where did it come from? You told me you were single, that you'd never been married. The web of lies was unraveling faster than Robert could manage. He'd built his double life on deception, compartmentalizing his two families so completely that neither side knew the other existed. Now, in front of hundreds of witnesses and at least one news camera, all his secrets were being exposed simultaneously. Linda stepped forward. Her tears stopped, and her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. Patricia, I'm Linda Roberts' wife of 25 years. I think we need to have a conversation about the man we've both been involved with. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my small but comfortable office at Riverside Community Mental Health Center, where I work as a family counselor. The irony isn't lost on me that my psychology degree, which Robert had dismissed as worthless, now provides me with both a meaningful career and the tools to understand and heal from my own family trauma. The dramatic changes in my life since graduation day still surprise me sometimes. Linda filed for divorce 3 months after the ceremony, using not only the evidence I'd discovered, but also additional financial records she'd been secretly gathering for 2 years. Her settlement was substantial enough for her to start her own catering business, something she'd dreamed about for decades, but never had the courage to pursue. We moved into a cozy 2-bedroom apartment together, and for the first time in my life, I'm seeing Linda as the strong, independent woman she was before Robert's emotional manipulation wore her down. Her catering company, Linda's Kitchen, is already booked solid through the holidays, specializing in comfort food for events and celebrations. The friendship with James has been one of the most unexpected gifts to come from that terrible day. After the initial shock wore off, he reached out to me through social media, curious to learn about the sister he'd never known existed. He transferred to a university closer to our new apartment, cutting all ties with Robert after learning the extent of his father's deception. James revealed that Robert had always spoken negatively about his other family, without ever mentioning names, making cruel comments about Linda's failures as a mother, and dismissing me as that disappointing kid who thinks she knows everything. Hearing Robert's casual cruelty toward us made James realize he'd been manipulated his entire life. Patricia has become an unexpected ally as well. Her guilt about unknowingly participating in Robert's deception led her to offer help with Linda's catering business, and the two women have formed a supportive friendship based on their shared experience of Robert's lies. Patricia had genuinely believed Robert was a divorced single father, and learning about his 25-year marriage devastated her almost as much as it did Linda. The four of us, Linda, James, Patricia, and I, have created something Robert never provided any of us: a genuine family dynamic based on honesty, support, and mutual respect. We celebrate each other's successes, help during difficult times, and most importantly, we tell each other the truth. My therapy sessions, both as a patient and as someone training to help others, have helped me understand Robert's narcissistic behavior patterns. His need to control through withheld approval, his inability to form genuine emotional connections, and his compartmentalization of relationships were textbook examples of someone incapable of healthy family dynamics. Professionally, my supervisor at the mental health center has noticed my natural ability to work with families dealing with deception and emotional abuse. She's encouraged me to pursue specialized training in family therapy, and I've been accepted into a master's program that will allow me to continue working while studying. The viral video of my graduation day speech has led to speaking opportunities at conferences about family dysfunction and finding the courage to confront abuse. I never sought this platform, but I've learned that sharing my story helps others recognize similar patterns in their own lives. Robert's consequences have been significant. His real estate business lost several major clients after the public scandal, and his reputation in the community never recovered. James's complete rejection of their relationship hit him harder than losing Linda or facing public humiliation. Patricia's demands for accountability about 24 years of lies left him isolated and defensive. I've started dating Derek, a fellow graduate student in the counseling program, who admires my resilience and emotional intelligence. Our relationship is built on the open communication and mutual respect I never saw modeled in my parents' marriage. Derek understands my journey and supports my career goals, creating the kind of partnership I never thought possible. The envelope that changed everything on graduation day taught me that knowledge truly is power, but only when used at the right moment and for the right reasons. I'd carried that secret for 3 years, hoping I'd never need it. But when Robert chose to publicly humiliate me, I realized that truth-telling could be its own form of justice. Looking back, I understand now that Robert's disowning me was actually a gift. It freed me from decades of seeking approval from someone incapable of giving genuine love. It forced me to build my own support system based on authentic relationships rather than biological obligation. The deeper lesson I've learned is that family isn't about DNA or legal connections. It's about genuine care, support, and love. Linda James. Patricia, Derek, and my chosen family of friends provide everything Robert never could: unconditional acceptance, celebration of my achievements, and emotional support during challenges. I've also learned that sometimes the people who claim to know you best are actually the ones who understand you least. Robert saw me as a disappointing obligation, but my real family sees me as someone worth celebrating and supporting. For anyone else dealing with family members who use love as a weapon or withhold approval as a form of control, I want you to know that you deserve better. Document the abuse, build your support network, and remember that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family. Sometimes standing up to bullies, especially family bullies, requires patience and strategy. But when the moment comes to speak your truth, don't let fear of consequences keep you silent. The courage to reveal difficult truths can transform pain into power and lies into liberation. Graduation day was supposed to mark the end of my college experience, but it actually marked the beginning of my real life. The life where I'm surrounded by people who genuinely love and support me, where my achievements are celebrated rather than dismissed, and where honesty is valued over maintaining comfortable lies. Robert taught me an important lesson, just not the one he intended. He showed me that I'd rather live authentically without his approval than live a lie to maintain his conditional love. The peace that comes from choosing truth over comfort, even when that truth comes with immediate consequences, is worth more than any false family harmony. That envelope didn't just contain documents about Robert's secret life, it contained the key to my freedom from his emotional manipulation. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let the consequences fall where they may. Have you ever had to make a choice between keeping a family secret and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about overcoming family challenges. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve genuine love and respect, not conditional approval. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your truth is worth telling even when it's difficult. May you find the courage to choose authenticity over approval, and may you surround yourself with people who celebrate your achievements rather than diminish them.